Hey everyone, Chris here. I've been doing some tier rankings for feats in 5th edition D&D, and I'm starting with the Player's Handbook. In my last video, I did the first half of the Player's Handbook, that's 21 feats, and we've got the Mage Slayer feat as our last feat that we ranked, and today we are going to start with the Magic Initiate feat. I'm using a fairly rigorous system for this, so if you don't know how it's going to work, then you haven't watched my preview video, so I'll link that up above for you. Otherwise, 21 more feats to go in the Player's Handbook. We might as well get started. Here's Magic Initiate. So we choose one of the primary spellcasting classes, and we learn 2 cantrips of our choice from that class's spell list, and we choose one first level spell from that spell list, and we can cast that spell once at its lowest level, and we must finish a long rest before we can cast it that way again, and our spellcasting ability for the spell depends on the class we chose. I have to say, I think Magic Initiate is pretty much an obsolete feat at this point, because there are other feats that are more modern now that are just sleeker in design. They give you the choice of your ability scores you want to use for casting. They allow you to cast the spells again using your own spell slots. So there's some clunkiness here that doesn't exist in more modern design, and there are viable alternatives. But, I mean, the 2 cantrips, that's worth 17 points, and the first level spell is worth 17 points, because we have a good selection to choose from. So it is a total of 34 points, and that is enough for D tier, right behind Heavily Armored. Next we have Martial Adept. So we learn 2 maneuvers of our choice from the Battle Master list, and our DC for them is based on 8 plus our proficiency bonus plus either our strength or dexterity modifier. And we get 1 superiority die, which is a D6. And so we really don't have very much to fuel these 2 maneuvers. But maneuvers are pretty good. So I still think this is worth 25 points, but it's really just one feature. The superiority die isn't a separate trait. It's just the fuel we have for the one trait we have. So it's 25 points total for Martial Adept. And that puts it in F tier, right behind Linguist. They should really probably give you 2 superiority dice. Next up, Medium Armor Master. So we got 2 things here. First, wearing medium armor doesn't impose disadvantage on your dexterity stealth checks. So if you are wearing medium armor, the top of the line is generally half plate, and 1 step down from that is the breastplate. The breastplate has a 1 lower armor class but doesn't impose disadvantage on dexterity stealth checks. So with this feat, you could wear the half plate and essentially you're going to walk away with a +1 armor class, but only in the case that you care about the disadvantage on stealth checks. So I don't think it's quite as good as a straight +1 to your armor class, but I figure it's worth 18. And second, when you wear medium armor, you can add 3 rather than 2 to your armor class if you have a dexterity of 16 or higher. So normally, medium armor caps your dexterity modifier at +2, and now we're capping it at +3. So I'd imagine in most cases, if you take this feat, you're going to have a 16 dexterity to take advantage of that, and so that's a +1 AC as well, really, and I figure that's worth 20 points. And so add those together, 38 points, and that's not bad. Enough to get into C tier at the bottom end. Next up, we have the Mobile feat. So 3 things here. First, speed increases by 10 feet. That's decent. That's worth 18 points. Second, when we take the dash action, difficult terrain doesn't cost us extra movement on our turn. That's okay. I'd say 13 points. I mean, sometimes it's really good, and then sometimes it doesn't come up at all. And then finally, when we make a melee attack against a creature, we don't provoke opportunity attacks from that creature for the rest of the turn, whether we hit or not. And I think that's probably the primary reason that most characters who take this feat take it, is so that they can be melee skirmishers. I think if you want to be a melee skirmisher, you either must have the Mobile feat or have class or subclass features that allow you to do a similar thing. So that one I think is a little more important. I gave it 20 points. Add those all together, Mobile gets a total of 51 points. And that is enough to get into A tier, right ahead of the Healer feat. And next up, we are going to talk about Moderately Armored. So Moderately Armored allows us to get a +1 to either Strength or Dexterity, so that choice gives it 22 points. And then we're going to get Medium Armor Proficiency, So medium armor proficiency is okay. It's a step up from light armor proficiency, especially if you're not super focused on dexterity. I mean, if you are just totally focused on dexterity, you maybe don't need medium armor at all. But I figure it's worth 15 points. The big thing here is we're also going to get proficiency with shields. Shields are great. That's +2 armor class. Uses up one of our hands, but I still think it's worth 20 points to be proficient in a shield. So add it all together, and moderately armored scores 57. And 57 is just enough to qualify for S tier. Yeah, pretty good. Next up, we have Mouted Combatant. 3 things here. So first, we have advantage on melee attack rolls against any unmounted creature that is smaller than our mount. And this is probably the best part of the Mounted Combatant feat. I mean, the idea is you want to get advantage as much as you can. So if you have a horse, for example, it's large-sized. If you're fighting medium or small creatures, you can have advantage on all your attacks. That's kind of nice. I'd say that's worth 25 points. You can force an attack targeted at your mount to target you instead. This one I also think is pretty good. I mean, if we have a mount, one of the concerns is we might lose it, right, if it gets targeted with too many attacks. So this allows us to help protect it, though at the cost of more attacks on us. But I still think it's worth 20 points. And then if our mount is subjected to an effect that allows it to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, it instead takes no damage if it succeeds and half damage if it fails. So it's evasion, right? Same thing that rogues get and that monks get when they get to level 7. And evasion is good. The issue is it doesn't come up as much. So I figure that's worth 10 points. Add those all together and we have a total of 55 points for Mounted Combatant. And that puts it at A tier and ahead of mobile. Next we have the Observant feat. 3 things here. First, we're going to increase our intelligence or wisdom score by 1. So that choice makes this worth 22 points. Second, we can read lips. That is super, super circumstantial. 2 points. And finally, we're going to get +5 bonuses on 2 of our passives. Wisdom Perception, which of course is the big one, and Intelligence Investigation. And I figure that's okay. It's worth 15 points. So Observant gets a total of 39 points. And that actually ties it with Keen Mind. And next we have Polearm Master. This is a pretty well-known feat, I think. So first off, if you take the attack action and you attack only with a glaive, halberd, quarterstaff, or spear, you can use a bonus action to make a melee attack with the opposite end of the weapon. The attack uses the same ability modifier as the primary attack, and the damage die for it is a D4. It does bludgeoning damage. So I gave the bonus action attack on Crossbow Expert 50 points. This one isn't quite as good. We're stuck with melee, and we're doing D4 damage, but it's still really good. So it's worth 40 points. And second, while we're wielding a glaive, halberd, pike, quarterstaff, or spear, other creatures provoke an opportunity attack when they enter the reach we have for that weapon. And that's fairly good. I'd say 20 points. And so add those 2 together and Polearm Master scores a solid 60. And that makes it an S tier feat. And it's going to end up here between alert and moderately armored. And next we have Resilient. This is a personal favorite of mine. So we choose one ability score and we gain the following benefits for it. First, we're going to increase the chosen ability score by 1 to a maximum of 20. And second, we're going to gain proficiency in saving throws using the chosen ability. So although you can apply Resilient to any of your ability scores, I'm only going to give it 20 points because you really don't get a choice because you're choosing Resilient for the saving throw proficiency. And so then your ability score increase is set for you. But the saving proficiency, that's a solid feature. I gave it 38 out of 50 points for a total of 58 for Resilient. And that is enough for S tier. It's going to be behind Polearm Master and ahead of Moderately Armored. Next feat up, Ritual Caster. So you've learned a number of spells you can cast as rituals. These spells are written in a ritual book, which you must have in hand when casting one of them. When you choose this feat, you acquire a ritual book holding 2 first-level spells of our choice. Choose one of the following classes: Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard. Choose Wizard. You must choose your spells from that class's spell list, and the spells you choose must have the ritual tag. The class you choose also determines your spellcasting ability for these spells: Charisma for Bard, Sorcerer, or Warlock, and Wisdom for Cleric or Druid, and Intelligence for Wizard. And again, choose Wizard. If you come across a spell in written form, such as a magical spell scroll or a wizard spellbook, you might be able to add it to your ritual book. The spell must be on the list for the class you chose, and the spell's level can be no higher than half your level, and it must have the ritual tag, and then there's a process for copying it into your book. So one of the biggest misconceptions I see for this one is you see the prerequisite says Intelligence or Wisdom of 13 or higher. That is not necessarily your casting ability. So you can have a Wisdom of 13 or higher and an Intelligence of 8, and you can totally pick Wizard as the class for which you get the ritual spells. And the reason you want to choose Wizard is because Wizards just have more rituals, and they have better rituals. And Wizards are the ones with spellbooks that you can copy the rituals from. So it's just by far the best option. And essentially we've got two different traits here. The first is we're going to get the 2 first level rituals, and I figure that's worth 20 points. And second, the ability to add rituals to the book, and that's really the premier feature. I mean, if you have a stingy DM who doesn't give you spells, it's not going to be great. But if you have a DM that is generous with spellbooks and that kind of thing, it's going to be insane. And for point value, I'm just going to go solid. It's 36 out of 50 points. So 20 plus 36 gives us a total of 56 for Ritual Caster. And that is enough for A tier. It is also enough to be at the top of A tier. The next feat is Savage Attacker. Once per turn, when you roll damage for a melee weapon attack, you can re-roll the weapon's damage dice and use either total. This isn't going to represent a huge increase to damage, but it will represent some increase to damage. I think it's good enough for 20 total. I mean, if it was on every attack, it would be worth more, but it's only once per turn. So I think 20 is about right. And Savage Attacker is another feat that should be a half feat, and it's not for some reason. So it's 20 total, which is definitely F tier. And Jad, it ended up tied with both Charger and Grappler, so those 3 are all tied, right near the bottom of F tier. Next up, we have Sentinel. So we have 3 features here. First, when we hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the creature's speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn. This is really good. This is definitely the best trait of this particular feat, and it's worth 30 points. Second, creatures provoke opportunity attacks from us, even if they take the disengage action before leaving our reach. That's not going to come up that much. I'm giving it 10 points. And then when a creature within 5 feet of us makes an attack against a target other than us, we can use our reaction to make a melee weapon attack against the attacking creature. That's a little bit better. I gave it 17 points. So we have a total of 57 points for Sentinel. And that's enough for it to be at the low end of S tier. And our next feat is Sharpshooter. One of the best known feats in the game. Wonder why? So we have 3 different features here. First, we get no disadvantage for attacking at long range with our ranged weapon attack rolls. It's good. It's worth 20 points. Second, our ranged weapon attacks ignore half cover and 3/4 cover. Not quite as impactful, but still decent. 15 points. And then the -5 plus 10 thing, and same as Great Weapon Master, I'm giving that 40 points. And again, if you can get advantage, it's a lot better. If you get more attacks, it's better. Against lower armor classes, it's better. But overall, it's good. 40 points. Add those all together, Sharpshooter is worth 75. That is enough to put it right below Crossbow Expert on S tier. Next feat is Shield Master. So we get the following benefits while we're wielding a shield. If you take the attack action on your turn, you can use a bonus action to try to shove a creature within 5 feet of you with your shield. And when you shove a creature, you can either push it 5 feet or you can shove it prone. And this is pretty good. It's worth 25 points. And then if we aren't incapacitated, we can add our shield's armor class bonus to any dexterity saving throw we make against a spell or other harmful effect that targets only us. The issue here is that it can target only us, and so a lot of things like Fireball or whatever, this isn't going to work for because there's usually multiple targets. But there's some dexterity saving throws that target only us, so I think it's worth 10. And then if we're subjected to an effect that allows us to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, we can use our reaction to take no damage if we succeed on the saving throw. And that's okay. I mean, it's too bad that it uses our reaction, but it's still okay. I'd say worth 15 points. Add those together, Shield Master totals 50 points. That's enough to sneak into the low end of A. It's actually tied with Healer. Next feat is Skilled. We gain proficiency in any combination of 3 skills or tools of your choice. So, 3 ribbons. That's what Skilled is. 3 ribbon features. And middle of the road ribbons, 5 points each. So that is 15 points total. And I'll tell you right now, by a fair amount, Skilled comes in with the lowest score of all the feats in 5th edition. So, in my opinion, Skilled is the worst feat in Dungeons & Dragons. It's also pretty much obsolete. There's just other feats that give you skills that are just way better. But yeah, that's a bad one. Let's move on to Skulker. So, 3 features here. First, we can try to hide when we're lightly obscured from the creature from which we're hiding. That's actually pretty good. It means we can hide in things like dim light. So, I gave that 25 points. Then, when we're hidden from a creature and miss it with a ranged attack, it doesn't reveal our position. And I don't know, I don't think that comes up nearly as much. I imagine most of the time we attack with advantage, we're going to hit. First off, I just don't think it's that big a deal. I gave it 10 points. And then dim light doesn't impose disadvantage on our wisdom perception checks relying on sight. That almost never comes up. It's a ribbon. It's 5 points. Add those all together and Skulker gets 40 points. And that's not bad. I mean, it's tied with Dual Wielder in C tier. Next up, we have Spell Sniper. So, 3 things here. First off, when we cast a spell that requires us to make an attack roll, the spell's range is doubled. I just want to say that most spells don't require attack rolls. In fact, the vast majority of spells do not require attack rolls. Mainly, the spells we're talking about with attack rolls are cantrips. The double range is okay, but I don't think it's a huge deal. It's worth 15 points. Then our ranged spell attacks ignore half cover and 3/4 cover. That's, again, okay. I gave it 15 points. And then we learn 1 cantrip that requires an attack roll. And we choose from the Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard spell list. And our spellcasting ability for this cantrip depends on the spell list we chose from. Charisma for Bard or Sorcerer or Warlock. Wisdom for Cleric or Druid. Intelligence for Wizard. And that's, again, okay. We're going to learn 1 cantrip. Keep in mind, yes, you can choose Eldritch Blast, but you're not getting Agonizing Blast or Repelling Blast. So Eldritch Blast really isn't all that much better than a Firebolt. I figure the cantrip's worth 8 points. Add them together, Spell Sniper's 38 points. That does make it enough for C tier, but right at the bottom. Next up, Tavern Brawler. So we actually have 4 things here. First, we can choose Strength or Constitution to get a +1 to. That's worth 22 points. We're proficient with improvised weapons. I don't know what to score that. I mean, things like throwing alchemist fire and stuff, that technically qualifies as improvised weapons, and that's okay. I'd say 10 points. Our unarmed strike deals a d4 damage. That's not very good. I mean, natural weapons that deal a d4 damage aren't very good either. I figure it's worth 4 points. And then when we hit a creature with an unarmed strike or improvised weapon on our turn, we can use a bonus action to attempt to grapple the target. That's actually fairly nice. In fact, that 1 trait alone is probably as good as the entire grappler feat. In other words, it's worth 20 points. Put them all together. Tavern Brawler is the feat you want to take if you want to make a grappler build, not the grappler feat. And yeah, 56 points altogether. And it is going to make A tier, and it is tied with Ritual Caster. Next feat is Tough. Your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to twice your level when you gain this feat. Whenever you gain a level thereafter, your hit point maximum increases by an additional 2 points. And Tough is not a flashy feat, but it's good. And one of the things that's nice about it is you can throw it on any character, and anyone will appreciate the Tough feat. I figure it's solid enough to get 46 points, but it is just 1 feature, so it is 46 total. And that is going to put it on B tier, and it's going to go right in between Inspiring Leader and Heavy Armor Master. Next up, we have Warcaster. So 3 traits here. First, we have advantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain concentration on a spell when we take damage. This is the main reason you take Warcaster, and it's worth a solid 30 points. Second, you can perform the somatic components of spells, even when you have weapons or a shield in one or both hands. Depending on your DM, this might not come up at all because a lot of DMs just ignore components these days. They're too complicated and convoluted, but if you need it, it's really good, so I gotta give it 15 points. And then when a hostile creature's movement provokes an opportunity attack from us, we can use our reaction to cast a spell at the creature rather than making an opportunity attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and target only that creature. Good trait, worth 20 points. Add them together, Warcaster gets 65 points. And yeah, no big surprise, Warcaster is an S tier feat. It's going to come in right behind Lucky and right ahead of Great Weapon Master. And finally, we have the Weapon Master feat. So we get 2 things here. First, we can increase our strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. That gives Weapon Master 22 points. Good thing, because the second trait is you gain proficiency with 4 weapons of your choice. Each must be a simple or martial weapon. That's for ribbons. I'm giving that a total of 8 points for 30 points altogether. And yeah, it's still an F feat. It's between Elemental Adept and Linguist. And there it is, 42 feats on the board from Player's Handbook. And what I notice here is S and F are filled in a lot more than all the other ranks. And what that tells me is the Player's Handbook needs a redesign because the feats there have poorer design. They tend to be either overpowered or underpowered. Well, the feats in the other books are more likely to be well-rounded. In my next video, we're going to be looking at the racial feats. Those are all in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. There's 15 of them, and it'll be interesting to see how they compare to the Player's Handbook feats. We should get a nice visual representation of that with the tier chart. So I hope you'll join me. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.